So what support or evidence do you have for embodied cognition? I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this wondering that, so that's a logical question to ask. So
Yeah, there's a lot of support coming from experimental procedures in psychology where these psychologists will ask subjects to perform some sort of task, and then by making manipulations on their bodies in certain ways, they find that the subjects differ in their results depending on simple facts even, such as whether they're right or left-handed. And then there's also work in robotics where robots have been designed that seem to perform sophisticated sorts of behavior, like navigating through a room, but do so in a way that doesn't rely on the sort of computationalism that once was thought to be the only way to solve these problems.
Yes, yes. So just recently, Larry just did a research seminar, and the title of the research presentation was Embodied Cognition, Lessons from Linguistic Determinism. And that was a very interesting presentation because it was if you like, a reconsideration, or if you like, a reconceptualization based on obviously scientific or empirical scientific work, to say that, hang on, the idea that we go from mind to body is actually not necessarily the case. We need to reconsider that and think about how the body, if you like, influences the mind. So
that's right.
Yeah, so I found that very interesting, and I think that's probably another example of how some of that evidence kind of works in the favour of embodied cognition. All right, let's move on. Let's have a look at some of this literature here. Do you want to just have a quick discussion about, for those who might be interested in embodied cognition, what's worthwhile having a look at? Did you want to mention something about your book here from the 2011?
Yeah, so I wrote a book published in 2011, which is intended to provide an entryway to people interested in the topic. What I do in that book is I divide the literature and the questions that are of interest in embodied cognition into three broad categories, and try to explain what these categories are and what support there might be for the themes within each category. So I think my book is actually a nice place to introduce yourself to the topic.
And I know in particular talk about those three broad themes as replacement, constitution and conceptualization. Did you want to just speak very briefly about each one of those, how they interrelate and overlap and support each other?
Yeah, sure. The theme of replacement involves work that tries to show that rather than relying on computational processes to perform certain tasks, we can actually replace the computational processes by focusing on body-environment interactions. In this field, you'll see work that tries to show that motor control of the legs, say, that used to be thought to be under computational sort of instructions, is in fact just a process of legs working like springs in an environment. The topic of conceptualization involves how the properties of bodies constrain or restrict the ways that you think about the world. And so one prediction of this school of thought is that if you and, say, an extraterrestrial with a body very different from yours were to look at the world, you would see different things, understand it in different ways, just in virtue of your differences in body. And the final program I look at, I call Constitution. And here the idea is that the body, or actually even pieces of the world, might be constituents in a cognitive process itself.
And I guess last question really, I know I haven't listed it here, but we've done a bit of work, if you like, around application of embodied cognition, obviously in this case education. Just tell us a bit more where you see maybe some of the application could possibly be used in embodied cognition, maybe from an educational point of view, because that's what we've been talking about whilst you've been here.
Sure. Well, one area sort of rich in application is this field known as situated cognition, where the idea here is that rather than trying to teach students abstract principles, you should situate them in an environment in which they're able to manipulate pieces of the environment and gain knowledge in that sort of way. So the knowledge comes in the form of interactions with the environment rather than the memorization of abstract principles. Another field that invites further study involves research on gestures. We gesture when we speak, and it turns out gesturing is an important component of thought itself. And if we can realize when we're speaking to students that they are communicating with their gestures, we have an additional way to access what they're thinking, and so another tool for instructing them.
Yes, I was going to say, I was going to ask you about gesture if you didn't bring it up, because I know that's something we've been looking at.
Yeah.
And is an area ripe for further research.
Definitely.
In particular, the connections with embodied cognition and what it can do, if you like, in an educational context.
Certainly, yeah.
Look, we might leave it there, but thank you for the opportunity to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming to La Trobe as a visiting scholar.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.